Everybody, in this video, I want to talk about being a great podcast guest. In 2018, it doesn't look like podcasts are slowing down anytime soon, and you might find yourself a podcast guest for your very first time, talking about your business, your organization, or your cause, whatever it might be. So I want to prepare you to be the best podcast guest that you can possibly be. Starting with number 10, having good audio. It doesn't have to be great audio. You don't have to spend an insane amount of money. You just have to have good audio coming from basically the mic placement. And even if you're using the Apple earbuds that come with it, it's still okay. But check your surroundings. Make sure you're not getting a lot of echo, a lot of reverb. Even in the room that I'm in right now, there's a lot of reverb, and I'm trying to silence some of that stuff or deaden some of that stuff with some of the items I have around this room. But it's important to understand that you don't have to spend a whole boatload of money on good audio. You can use your microphone on your headphones, but I'd really recommend something like a headset, or even the Yeti USB microphone is really great. It's only 99 bucks. I super recommend that for your first microphone. Tip number 9 would be good lighting, especially for those of you who are getting into doing more live streaming, or you're on a Google Hangout or a Zoom chat, that kind of thing, where the host might be recording that video and audio. You know, things like not positioning your laptop into a window so that it's sort of just washing everything out in the video camera feed, or your facial exposure is super, super dark and we really can't see you, and making sure that you're using natural light as best you can. It's your most affordable light source. Placing yourself by the window, opening the window so that it's facing you, and overall just not having anything sort of just saturating the entire video feed. You look a lot better and a lot more professional on those live streams. Tip number 8 is good video. If you're looking for good lighting, it's probably because you're doing more video live streaming, and you can get away with most laptop video cameras or webcams that are built into laptops. Just be cautious of the angle of the video, so it's not getting you that double chin effect that we also just don't want on a live stream. But one of my tips would be to get a external web camera and set it up on a tripod, for a few reasons. Number one is you can get a different angle, and you can get a top-down angle, and it just looks a little bit better. And tip number 2 here is if you set that camera up on a tripod, it doesn't have shaking effect if you hit your hands on a desk, or if you're moving a desk, or if you're moving your seat or something like that. If it's on a laptop and the laptop is on a desk, it shakes the whole laptop, which shakes your camera feed. If you have it up on a tripod, it's off of your desk, it's not attached to anything. If you're moving around and you're sort of somebody who just can't sit still through an interview, that's a huge benefit, because we don't like to see that feed bouncing up and down. Number 7, keeping background noise or echo or reverb down to a minimum. And it's really difficult to solve this. And you really only want to look into this if you're somebody who you're going on a sort of a podcasting marathon, or you're finding yourself getting invited more to podcasts. Even in this room is in an attic that I've turned into an office, and it has a lot of reverb. There's a hallway right here, and I'll show you what I've done to sort of help that a little bit. I could put up more maybe artwork on the walls, or spend some money on putting up more shelving and bookcases. That really sort of helps deaden the sound. But one tip is to not look for soundproof enclosures or soundproof equipment, because that's for really soundproofing a room. You want to look for sound dampening or sound deadening things. Tip number 6 is record locally. Record your audio on your side from your microphone onto your computer. It's going to have a way better quality level than just recording yourself through the internet, through voice over IP or Skype or Zoom or whatever your host is using. It's a great sort of insurance plan. If something happens during your connection and your co-host didn't ask you to record locally, it'll be a great benefit to that person, he or she, to have a copy of your sound and your audio from your side. Tip number 5, this is when you start getting into the real theoretical side of being a podcast guest, or even a podcast host if you eventually do want to start your own podcast. But starting to do the research on your podcast host, right? What is this podcast about? You might have such an awesome business and an awesome service or product that people start knocking on your door that they want to interview you, but you don't know anything about them. You don't know what their main topics are. Now, great podcast hosts will tell you what their audience is, what they're looking for out of this interview, but it's still good to do some research to understand who you're about to talk to, because you may have never spoken to this person before. So if you can kind of reverse engineer who their audience is, what their blog is all about, what their podcast is all about, it's only going to help you shape the message moving forward on that interview. Tip number 4, and this is huge. I really struggled with where to place these last 4 items on the list, but focus on the audience. Make sure that your answers are focused on what that audience is really going to want. You might have different ways to answer things, and you can always sort of shape your answers to different audiences, because you might not always be speaking to your preferred customer. Like, a lot of people want to get on podcasts because they feel like they can sort of sell their product or service, but the audience is really the most important piece out of all of this. And if you're shaping your answers or your dialogue to what they really want to hear, what they really relate to, that's really going to help make the podcast so much better. Tip number 3, give answers as long as they need, no more and no less. And what do I mean by that? I mean, no more long-winded answers. You don't need to ramble. You just need to get the answer out in a very concise and clear manner. If it's a complex question that deserves a complex answer, break it down and let folks know, okay, this is going to be a complicated answer, but I'm going to take it in 3 sort of steps. And if you're really good at, if you really know what you're talking about, it's going to be easier for you to sort of navigate those longer form answers. Tip number 2, and this is important for both you and the host of the podcast: share, share, share. Don't just do an episode and forget about it, right? I know a lot of people who do a lot of podcasts and they don't even retweet when the host shares their episode. And it drives me crazy because it's content that both of you can share and you can use it in many places. I really can't drill this one down any more than that. You really should share the content that is put out there. Again, I know it sounds so obvious, but reuse it. If you're struggling with content marketing and trying to figure out where do I come up with more content, break down the episode that you did with that host and you use it as blog posts, use the audio bites from it, keep reusing it, but keep resharing it because it's only going to help amplify the message for everybody. Tip number 1, and this is the most important, bring some life to the party. I've been on so many podcasts where the host is either super boring or super dry, and the same thing with the guest. It's just super boring and super dry. I'm not saying you have to be really funny or really witty or just in your face with all kinds of energy, but what I am saying is to recognize that during this conversation, during this hour, half hour, whatever the time span is for this podcast is, it's all about the audience. It's about engaging and keeping people listening. So don't be so dry or don't be so standoffish if there are questions you don't understand. Don't be scared, right? Have some confidence going into this. The person sought you out or you sought them out to be on this podcast. So understand that first and foremost and have that confidence building. But if there are questions that you don't want to answer, don't make it awkward or just say, you know what, I really don't understand that question, but here's an answer that I think you're looking for. Or I'm not really comfortable answering that. I don't talk about money or revenue or that kind of thing on my show, but what I can talk to you about is how many customers we engage on per month. Like, whatever it is, try to keep the conversation going. Never really let it die out. That's the hardest thing for a host to manage, and just be respectful of that. And everybody will have a great time on the show. They'll be engaged with you. You'll be engaged. You'll find some new things out of this. It's almost like a therapy session. And at the same time, the audience who's listening to it will be super engaged. They'll seek you out after. And it's going to be a win-win for everybody. So if you find yourself podcasting more in 2018, being a podcast guest, or even getting into a podcast, I hope these tips help you understand that and really help you get to be a more engaged podcast guest. It's super fun. It can get a lot of results for you. I really hope you find yourself on a podcast in 2018. That's it, everybody. It's mattreport.com, mattreport.com/subscribe to join the mailing list. It's the #1 way to stay connected. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit like, smash that like button, as every YouTuber says. If you really enjoy it, share it with friends and family. Really appreciate it. We'll see you in the next video.